Developing methods, solutions, and products which work with and/or mimic nature is what we do here at Vespa and OFM. It is who we are and why we are committed to changing the paradigm of health and performance, one athlete at a time. That's you. So today, I'd like to share 3 key blood tests, and with them, Peter's recommended reference range rather than the standard medical reference range. These are things I developed with OFM. Most docs won't order these unless you request them. Take responsibility and insist on them. Now the saying, "May you live in interesting times," could not be truer today than at any other point in history. We're living it. We're living in those interesting times. And with the summer receding, we find ourselves at a seminal crossroads because things are not working out as planned, promised, or expected. Instead, we are finding ourselves in this binary blame game of vaccinated or not vaccinated causing the problem as the science continues to evolve, which is showing a much more complicated, nuanced, and dynamic scenario than the simple solution policymakers and big pharma promised and delivered at warp speed. Now, the word warp should have been a warning because things certainly are playing out as warped, with the only thing truly moving at warp speed being the Delta variant, and with more variants to come.
Scotty, I need warp speed in 3 minutes or we're all dead.
So you are probably wondering, both on a conscious and subconscious level, what you can do. Everybody's wondering. It's on our minds, right? The answer is you can do quite a bit. And if you found your way to this vlog, you're already further ahead of the curve than most. So let's dive in. You see, the science, especially the growing data, does provide a clear picture of who is actually having poor outcomes, breakthroughs, and antibody-dependent enhancement, or ADE. These are people who are severely metabolically compromised. Things like vitamin D deficiency, obesity, hyperinsulinemia, respiratory diseases or challenges, including smoking. There's liver disease, including people on statins, which also leads to heart disease, which you take a statin for, so it screws up your liver. You got blood disorders, immunocompromised people, inflammatory diseases, etc. And ironically, all of these chronic conditions, in most cases, are entirely preventable through metabolic health. Now, by digging into the data, we can actually navigate the complexities of nature, something I discussed in my previous blog on the natural and elegant chaos of natural systems. And while the only thing guaranteed on this journey called life is eventual death, you do have way more control over the current situation than you realize. However, that control also means taking responsibility rather than ceding that responsibility to the healthcare system, government policy, or even the latest internet health guru, including what you're hearing from me. It has to make sense to you. You have to take control. And understand this one thing. You are in control of your health. Don't let anybody take that away. So why am I talking about being at a metabolic crossroads? Recent developments on the current global health challenge, yes, that one, have us at a crossroads. And frankly, I don't know enough to make a recommendation on the 2 choices that everybody's being hammered with. And that is, to vaccinate or not to vaccinate. That is the question. However, I can offer a third rail, no matter what existential conclusion you decide upon with respect to the current perceived choices we are being bombarded with on a minute-by-minute basis This is a third rail that is actually perfectly aligned with the data in nature, and that is reclaiming your metabolic fitness. Over a year ago, I did a vlog on getting ahead of the curve and supported what I was saying with specific science to support my recommendations. Since that time, the evolving science has not only supported but strengthened these recommendations. Getting metabolically fit is as big, if not bigger, factor in preventing a poor outcome. Doesn't matter whether you are vaccinated or not. So today, I'd like to share 3 key blood tests, and with them, Peter's recommended reference range rather than the standard medical reference range. These are things I developed with OFM. Taken together, they are a great indicator of metabolic fitness. Oddly enough, 2 out of these 3 blood tests you have to ask for because they are not included in a standard panel. Most docs won't order these unless you request them. Take responsibility and insist on them. Ready? The first test is vitamin D status, also known as 25-hydroxyvitamin D. The second is fasting insulin. Now, these 2 tests you need to insist upon because they are not part of most standard blood panels. I'm hammering on this, right? Make sure you get vitamin D and fasting insulin. The third blood test is triglycerides, which are part of a standard lipid or cholesterol panel. So why are these 3 so important? Well, poor vitamin D status has consistently correlated to poorer outcomes in today's situation. As an example, you wonder why African Americans are so disproportionately affected, while Africans living in Africa have had a far different income, like hardly any problems, where I might add, healthcare is virtually non-existent. Year-round sun exposure is one of those big factors. Now, back in 2010, the OFM program identified the prevalence of suboptimal or poor vitamin D status as a factor for both health and performance. And I set a benchmark of 50 nanograms per deciliter instead of the 20 or 30. And guess what? The emerging papers are suggesting exactly this. 50 is optimal. Second, and this is huge, hyperinsulinemia is one of the biggest markers for poor outcomes and even death. Whether you get vaccinated or not, if your insulin is through the roof, you're guaranteeing yourself really bad problems, whether it is now with the current pandemic or long term. This is why fasting insulin is such a great starting point, yet why it is not part of a standard panel in today's diabetic world is beyond comprehension. Now, my recommendation is to be at 12 microunits or less, with 4 to 6 being ideal. And 12 is less than half of the bottom of the reference range of 25. Now, I can't stress this enough because high insulin forces cellular glucose metabolism and inhibits fat metabolism. In the context of the current situation, the disease in question, RNA replication, is fueled by glucose metabolism and inhibited by beta oxidation. When your fasting insulin is sitting in the range of 4 to 6, your cells are using fat as fuel, making for a much less hospitable environment for RNA/viral replication. Triglycerides, which are normally part of a standard lipid cholesterol panel, are the third key marker. I like to see people below 100 milligrams per deciliter and ideally below 80. The bottom of the medical reference range is 150, and even that level is nothing to sweat, but something to work on. While this does not discount other blood work in any way, knowing these 3 key metrics can give you a sense of your risk profile to see if you need to improve your metabolic health. Taken together with some of the strategies I outline in getting ahead of the curve, you can take back a significant degree of control of your health during these uncertain times.